Because of this program, I have been able to interview a lot of really successful, really interesting, really motivated people that are motivated to learn a lot about very interesting topics. And while it is true that a lot of them have focused a lot of their efforts on reading the real estate literature that's out there, and a lot of their ideas were formed from that real estate literature, there are other people that a lot of their ideas don't come from most of the books and thought leaders that are popularized, but things that are a little bit off the beaten path. And those people that get a lot of their information from those off the beaten path resources tend to be very interesting to talk to. And when it comes to being an investor, sometimes it's very good to get different information than everyone else has, so you don't feel like you're moving along with the herd. Today, we're joined by someone that certainly goes off the beaten path in terms of the books where he seems to get most of his motivation from. So we're going to have a really interesting conversation today with someone that is more focused on things that may be deeper than real estate, but real estate is the tool that he uses to accomplish his goals. So in the conversation, first of all, we're going to talk about why our guest is taking 6 months off to travel and how he is planning on using his real estate portfolio to help finance this travel and the lifestyle that he loves to live. We're also going to talk about what our guest calls poverty consciousness and how he helped alleviate it in himself and how you can do the same. And we're going to discuss why our guest is extremely dedicated to looking inward and trying to find answers from within, as opposed to focused on specific tactics and strategies. Basically, he believes the strategies will come. If you're putting yourself in a position to succeed, the strategies are going to come. But to have a thorough, deeper understanding of yourself is far more powerful. So a lot of interesting topics that we certainly have not gotten into much on this program. Now, about a year and a half ago, I wrote an ebook that I only made available very, very briefly. And it may be the case that I only make this ebook available again very, very briefly. But I received a ton of requests for my presentation, 7 Stages for Passive Investor Due Diligence. And it's a topic that I'm very passionate about. And I boiled down that presentation into a very short list of exactly 111 questions passive investors should be asking. Now, before I even give you access to download this book, I want to say, as I've said previously on a Monday Minutes, that the goal here should not be to copy and paste this ebook, give it to a sponsor you're thinking about investing with, and have them answer all these questions. The goal is, I will certainly give you this tool, but don't burn those relationships. The goal should be for you to answer those questions on your own, and ones that you can't answer yourself, maybe ask the sponsor when appropriate. Okay, now, so the ebook is titled Leading the Round, 111 Questions Passive Investors Should Be Asking. I'm going to give you the URL. It's available for free on our website, cfcmentorshipprogram.com/questions. We just put it up. I'm probably going to make it available for 21 days. Just promise me you will not copy, paste, and forward to the next sponsor you're thinking about investing with, because I promise you it would be a ton of work for them to answer all these questions. So again, it's cfcmentorshipprogram.com/questions. And I hope you enjoy it. How's it going, everyone? Our guest for today is Ramon Gonzalez, who is the CEO of Summit Home Buyers, where he focuses on investing in hard money loans and placing capital with quality operators. He specializes in due diligence and risk analysis and has a specialty when it comes to real estate financing. So, Ramon, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be on the show with you, Hunter. I'm a fan of the show. I'm a listener as well. So excited to be on and add value to your audience.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We've been talking many times over the years, and every time we talk, it sounds like we're doing a podcast just because you and I both are on the same page when it comes to a lot of things. So I figured, you know what, let's make it official. And you actually had a Facebook status recently that I was intrigued, and it was like the final thing that made me go, okay, this conversation needs to happen, which we'll jump into in just a moment. But before we do that, you know, for the listeners that aren't already familiar with you, tell us just a bit about your background and then how you segued into the real estate sector.
Background is family's originally from Cuba. I moved here, so I'm first generation, born and raised in Miami. Went to school over at Florida National University in Miami. And then I got a corporate job over at General Electric in New York. So my whole life kind of grew up lower middle income class. First time to kind of see snow was when I was 18 or 19 and got that job in General Electric in Connecticut. So I stayed in Connecticut for 3 or 4 years on GE's financial management program. Realized the corporate world wasn't for me. I knew that 6 months going in, but I wanted to give it a shot and finish the rotational program and everything else. So once that was wrapped up, I started going to the RIAs and those things like that. And I met a local partner. My first deal, Hunter, a lot of people don't know, I invested in a company that really scammed us of about $60,000. We're supposed to be some educational franchise type real estate opportunity. We ended up getting that money back about a year later. But I was, 22-year-old kid out of college. 60 grand was a lot of money. I mean, that was more than my salary at the time. But through that, I met a great partner who's still a lifelong friend. I almost consider him like a second dad. And him and I are still close to this very day. We've done a lot of deals since. So out of every opportunity comes greatness, right? If you're looking for it, if you're open to it, right? So we ended up getting the money back. I quit that corporate, General Electric. Once my rotation was over, I quit that. Did some multifamily up in Connecticut. And then once they let me go, I said, I got to figure out something to make some more income. So I started doing some direct mail and marketing. And I started wholesaling some properties up in Connecticut. And then I said, you know what? I'm tired of the cold. I'm a Florida boy. I miss my family. Moved back down to Miami. And in Miami, I couldn't buy and hold things. The numbers didn't make sense. So I ended up just starting a wholesale company, starting marketing, fixing and flipping, buying and holding and all that. And we made it through the cycle. So this was, I made it through the '08 cycle. And then, the rest is history from there. So that gives you a background from that time frame. Since '08, after that, we then scaled up the company again, started buying and holding rentals through maybe 11 through 15. And then 15 through 18 started selling. But all those years we were wholesaling, fixing and flipping, as well as buying and holding. By 18, we sold everything. And the entire portfolio we actively manage. And then we got into the lending side. On the hard money side, it's primarily what we do. We also invest in some equity deals, and we've done some general partnerships where we're the actual sponsor on a deal, and we'll go out and raise capital on a couple of deals. But we're looking to get away from that. Mostly what we do is we're looking to be passive. I call it pactive. We're looking to be a hybrid. We'll place capital with great operators on a relationship basis. And that's what we do day to day right now. We don't do a whole lot. We're mostly on the money side. We are doing this. Hunter inspired me to do a feeder fund. So we are doing our first feeder fund on our biggest acquisition so far, which is a 996 unit building in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I love hearing that. So walk us through kind of that transition, because someone like yourself that's been involved in the sector in just so many different ways, everything from wholesaling, fix and flipping to lending and syndications. Why is it that you were so compelled to liquidate a lot of those active assets? And now, having seen so many deals, the passive approach continues to be really compelling to you. What is that about?
It's really about lifestyle, Hunter. It's about lifestyle, and I have preferences. This is the way I want to live my life. For me, it was about lifestyle. So I didn't mind putting in the work. You're not able to get away from that, right? So I didn't mind putting in the work, but long term, I knew that having a team, right? In the middle of our wholesale days, I was working 60, 80-hour weeks with my wife. So we did this together, my wife and I, on the wholesale side, fix and flip, buy and hold. So I met my wife in 2008, 9. I was going to pimp my life out, right? My wife's name is Christy, like yours, Hunter. And all of a sudden, I met this beautiful woman, and I said, oh, crap. I just started to pimp my life. I started to get a nice condo on South Beach, beautiful view. I was in the happening spot, and I happened to meet this angel, and, game over, right? But we built this beautiful business together. We bought all the rentals together. We hired staff. We had acquisition people. We had a staff of 6, 7, 50 to 100 grand a month in overhead, no matter what happened. It gets stressful over time. And then managing the rentals, even though we had property managers and project managers and we knew what we were doing, you're still running an active business, running with EOS and traction and everything else. It's work. And we didn't, at the end of the day, I like what Robert and Kim Kiyosaki said about this. We just don't like the operations. We're grateful we did it. And I'd much rather be on the other side and let great operators do what they do now. I think that we were great operators. And I know that we were great operators. And at the same time, it just stopped being joyful. And when that stops happening, then we got to shift gears. My wife is more evolved than me. She saw it earlier. And then a big transition that caused that to happen, 200, was my daughter. Like, I wanted to be a dad, and me working 60, 80 hours a week, being stressed because now my wife was the integrator of the business. And when she left, it left me to deal with the team. And I was not really equipped to deal with the team. I was more the visionary. So really lifestyle choices. And we didn't need to anymore, Hunter. We didn't need that stress. Kind of once we started getting into the lending side, really in 17, 18. And I said, well, dang, I can have the employee be the money and have the money do most of the work and just find great people through my network and my relationships, which I've been in this game 15 years. So we've got a great network. We've got a great relationship and we have a competitive advantage, right? Play to your advantage, right? Whatever that advantage is, find a competitive advantage and stick to it and take advantage of it, right? So, and that's going to be based on your unique ability, what that is to you. And Hunter and I both study a similar teacher that talks about unique ability. Get really clear on what that is. And everyone's got a unique ability wealth path. I kind of coined that wealth path phrase, a unique ability wealth path that's going to take you to where you want to go on the wealth front in your unique path. And you got to follow that path based on your advantages and what you're uniquely gifted at.
Yeah. I mean, you've used a lot of vocabulary there that I just resonate with so much. And I want to circle back on it because I think it's important. So one of the books you just dropped there, worldviews that you just dropped there to be more accurate, is Traction and the EOS system. And the author of that book has also another book where he co-authors, which is called Rocket Fuel. And Gino Wickman has not been a guest on the program, but Mark Winters has been a guest on the program. So if you just Google ASIM Capital Rocket Fuel, you'll find an interview with that for the listeners at home. And then as well as just talking about focusing on your market advantage and your unique ability, which is something that we've harped on many times here, because not only is that the way that capitalism should work, where you just really double down on your market advantage and your economies of scale and the things that come along with specialization, but also it allows you to live a good life because you're doing the things you love to do all day, every day, as opposed to banging your head against the wall trying to force yourself to learn skills that you don't have natural talents at. Now,
let me interject because there's a point there too. Not only what you said, which is remarkable and accurate, from a spiritual perspective, which is what has allowed me to transition like this. Your creator has given you blessings and those blessings will provide for you. But if you're not aware of what those blessings are that have been given to you, you can't double down on them. Right? So getting clear of what those blessings are that you're blessed with, your gifts will make room for you, but you've got to figure out what those gifts are. And everybody has them and they're all different. I mean, that's the magic.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then of course, once you do that, you obviously get to live a fulfilling life, focusing on things that you love to do, which come naturally to you. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not hard work. It means that the hard work should be focused on things you're going to get the best return on your investment of your time towards. So we can talk about that endlessly, but obviously we share that sentiment.
Well, that and kind of as you follow that path, and I'm kind of leaning more and more on the spiritual side as I evolve, Hunter, just because I've realized that the money and all this external stuff is great and I'm wonderful and I'm grateful for it. But really you get to a point in life where I've talked to enough people that have made enough money and that's not all of it. So what I'm really sharing with you is if you follow the calling of your soul, which is usually linked to your unique ability, you follow that calling of your soul, there's a guide, a Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, right? That goes in front of you, makes all the crooked places straight, opens all the doors, sets the table before you, and it just becomes easier. So Hunter, this $100 million deal we just did was the easiest deal we've done by far. And I've had the least involvement of my time.
Yeah, that's powerful. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about kind of the current investing strategy, and particularly how has all of the craziness that we've seen in the media and the craziness that we've seen in the health sector in particular, how has that impacted your worldview as it relates to this and also potentially your business plan?
I think the biggest thing that this has done, it has really allowed me from a spiritual perspective to really open up to like just higher guidance and what things are meaning. It's allowed me the time to really dig deep into my beliefs and what success means and what spiritual success now, and just redefining what things actually mean and really looking to find peace, unconditional love and joy and grace and real true abundance, right? True abundance is outside of you, right? Being wealthy and having money are two very different things. When you are being wealthy, you're feeling and you're being wealthy. You are abundance. You are it. You don't need anything in the exterior world to support that. So what I'm finding, Hunter, is there's people like Nelson Mandela who, no matter what's going on in the exterior world, can find peace, love, and joy in a jail cell. And then not only come out, but when people ask them, hey, how'd you make it through all that suffering? His response is, hey, I didn't suffer through this. I prepared. this idea of the kingdom of heaven is within you, he found that within himself, and it's here. And then not only did he find it within himself, he made it be where he was at. He wasn't in jail that whole time. So what I'm saying to your listeners is, if you guys can find that place within yourselves, that you are at peace within yourself, nothing in the exterior world can touch you, because these financial crises and these epidemics, they're going to come and go.
Yeah.
The real core is, who are you at your being? Because you can always find the peace and the unconditional love and the grace and the joy. It's always there. But the mind isn't trained to look for that. The mind is trained to be the stupid servant of the awakened heart. The mind left on its own will look for what's wrong. What do you got to do? Who do you got to fix? And it'll keep you in this constant stress of anxiety. And guys, listeners of Hunters, I'm just a student of this. I'm a practitioner. Do I still fall in traps in times like that? Absolutely. But what I am saying to you is there's a higher flow going on. And if you can tap into it and get in that zone, it will free you. Because I've seen a lot of guys make a lot of money and have the passive income and then not give themselves permission to enjoy the ride. You know, they have all this money and this exterior wealth, but inside they're living poor. Inside they're living in lack. Inside they're living a poverty consciousness. You might as well not have the money because you're really broke inside. And I'm not judging you. I'm loving you.
Yeah, that's a really powerful concept. And actually, there's a tie in there that I want to talk about later in this conversation. So, okay, so COVID and the additional stuff that we've seen going on out in the streets and just all the really, really ahistoric kind of stuff, it really does tend to show your weaknesses, both internally, externally, financially, emotionally, spiritually, and also sometimes tactically. So let's talk about some of the tactics. What has changed from a strategic standpoint when it comes to investing or running a business in a post-COVID world?
So great question. And I love that you talk about the tactics. I wanted to give you guys on the prior talk, prior conversation Hunter and I had, I wanted to give you guys and really share with you the mindset, right? Because I believe that success anywhere, I agree with Tony Robbins on this, 80% of it is psychology. So I wanted to show you the psychology of what's driving my abundance right now is an internal flow of abundance connected to my creator, the spirit that creates everything that is abundant, right? Because everything in the exterior world, there's going to be lack out there, right? There is lack out there and there is scarcity and there is challenges. But if you connect to that kind of like the root to the tree who's producing an abundance of fruit through spirit, that's always going to multiply, right? Your neighbor might not be there, but if you're opening up every day, making connections to a higher source, you're going to be abundantly provided for. It's like Jesus with the 12 baskets of bread and the fish, like that's what multiplies. And to give you an example of how that consciousness then translates into business, we've made more this year in the first 6 months than all last year through COVID. And it hasn't been because my strategy has changed. It's been exactly the same. It's been the mindset that's changed. It's been the spirit that's changed. So there's this beautiful koan in Buddhism, and it's called, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. What it means is you change, your attitude changes, your consciousness changes, how you are being and feeling about what you are doing changes. So what you are doing changes. What you are doing is irrelevant to how you are being and feeling. If you could bring that into your being, magic starts to happen. And then you give yourself permission to live the life of your dreams.
Let's talk a bit about living that life. So recently I mentioned that you previously had a Facebook status that I was like, okay, this is going to make for a really interesting conversation. Walk us through kind of what that status was talking about and now where you are in that journey.
Sure. So status was through COVID, one of the things we learned is that we didn't have family come over. My daughter wasn't going to school. So a lot of things opened up where me and my wife realized we didn't really need all this help and support and everything we had in Miami. Not that we had a bad life. We had a great life there. And yet we didn't really need it. So she came up to me with this idea of, hey, what if we took this show on the road, took everything we could fit in our car, sold everything else, right? Because we were renting, sold everything else, all our attachments, fit whatever we can fit in the car and live off Airbnbs for an indefinite period. And we liked the idea. So we started giving away stuff. And it was a process because attachments, as soon as you go on a spiritual journey, the first thing you see is how attached you are to things. And by attached is, Hunter, I was attached to my blender. There's certain things like I just can't live without this thing. But what happened is when that showed up for me, I started to give that up, right? I was attached to caffeine. I was attached to going to the gym. Well, I stopped going to the gym. I stopped drinking, a lot of coffee, a lot less, right? So figure out what these attachments are and you start to release them. But what you end up gaining is freedom. So before we left, my wife said, hey, look, there's a stowaway coming. And I said, a stowaway, baby? What do you mean? And she goes, well, I just had a positive pregnancy test. And I go, well, I guess this soul's adventurous. He's coming with. So now we're on the show on the road. And I think we're figuring out what our next Airbnb is going to be. And my wife is looking for some midwives in different areas so she can connect with them and figure that out. And it's been a process. It's not like it's all sunshine and rainbows once you do this. It's a process of adjusting. It's a process of slowing down. I mean, Hunter and I'm going to speak for you, Hunter, just because I know you. We're so amped up at times that winding down has been harder, right? But you can do so much more with less. I mean, you can do so much more with less. And then it really frees up time for all these other hobbies. I started playing volleyball 2 times a week that I stopped playing. And I started taking my daughter on epic bike rides and hike trails and boogie boarding. And I'm going to go surfing tomorrow. Like these things that hadn't showed up, Hunter, that really make life fun. There's still the work. I mean, I'm still doing the work, but how I'm showing up to the work is way different. Whether I'm renting an empty unit on Miami and it's a, quote unquote work that I didn't like to do, or I'm doing a $100 million deal, I'm showing up the same. And that's really what I want to share with your listeners.
Let me ask you this, because I'm not sure if your perspective on this topic may have changed just given some of the stuff you've talked about today, but I want to mention it because I think it may tie in an interesting manner. So when I first got into the world of real estate, one of the first books, I'd say the first 10 books that I read was a book called The Millionaire Next Door. And I was surrounded by people that really bought into that perspective on investing, which is if you really save, you can have more money to invest. And if you play with that saved money on a financial calculator in 5, 10, 60 years, you're going to be really happy that you saved that money and gave up on some of the things that maybe you could have done without. And later when you're 60, you're going to really enjoy your life. And I read this book and tried to buy into this because the people that I respected most were kind of talking to me like that. And it never resonated with me. It didn't resonate with me to give up on the things that I wanted to do. And 60 years from now, I get to do those things. That was like the worst version of why I wanted to be in business I could possibly imagine. As an example, I really like to travel. I really like to eat at nice restaurants. Those are like my two vices in terms of money. I don't like really expensive cars. That's just not my thing. I'm appreciative of them, but I don't own them. What is your thoughts on kind of splurging on the things that motivate you versus kind of giving up some of the attachments that you mentioned? Maybe they're not inversely correlated. Maybe they're not mutually exclusive. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it all goes back to this idea of you being abundance and how it all goes back, Hunter, to loving the self. This idea of, hey, I have to go earn something, that's not loving the self. And loving right? One of my teachers did away with all the commandments. He only left 2 of them. Love the Father above everything else. And 2 was love your neighbor as yourself, which presupposes that you love yourself, because that same neighbor that you're supposed to love presupposes that you love yourself, right? That stuff that's been here before Hunter, like other lifetimes like that you love yourself. And what's happening is a lack of love. There's an idea of separation. So you don't love the self. So you're beating yourself up and then you're not giving to yourself. So you have to earn it. And then when you get there, when you actually earn it, you don't give it to yourself. You make the goal bigger, right? This is what entrepreneurs do because I've done it. I'm guilty of it, guys. And I'm just speaking my truth. And Dan Sullivan and a couple of guys Hunter knows as well, my financial advisors is in masterminds with a lot of these guys. And the story is, hey, okay, now I got enough money to buy a helicopter. Okay, well, now I don't really want the helicopter. I want the private jet. And they just keep themselves on a perpetual rat race, never enjoying the ride. So really, it's about you not being worth it. It's about you. It's not about the money because, guys, there is no shortage in spirit. There's only shortage in the physical world. And there's only shortage in the physical world if you're not connected to spirit. If you're connected to spirit, you can always go make more money. You can always go get more. In infinite abundance, you will always be provided for. And can you trust that universe? Oh, I'm trading it for later. Hunter, let's keep it 100. If you're not going to give $10 out of 100, you're never going to give 10 million out of 100 million. And that's giving to others. You're not going to give to yourself. So for my personal journey, it was easier for me to give to others. And I started to give to charity in a big way. And I know a lot of other guys that really have a lot higher means than I do. And then they give in a way that's not reflective of their being. And it just robs them of their own joy. Like they can't detach from the money. So really, Hunter, the money controls them. They're attached to the money. And as long as you're attached to money, you cannot enjoy it because you don't trust yourself or the universe that you can go out and get more. You believe in lack. You may talk abundance, but you live lack.
Yeah, I hear you. And, one of the things you mentioned in that was the perpetual chasing of the horizons that entrepreneurs tend to do, where by nature, people who are self-taught, self-directed, and I don't mean people who are only entrepreneurs. I mean, anyone listening to this program, you have an entrepreneur side of you because you're self-taught, you're self-directed. You have realized that investing in the stock market, though you were taught to do it, is something that you want to stay away from. Even if it's just a small percentage of your portfolio, you need to go learn something that wasn't taught in academia. You're going to listen to this podcast. You are an entrepreneur. Now, what tends to happen is because you're self-taught, because you're self-motivated, because you're self-powered, you tend to chase the horizon infinitely and move the needle at which you're going to measure your own success. Now, for you, that's probably very hard on you emotionally to not really celebrate those wins. But I guarantee there's some loved ones that it's 10 times harder on to see someone grinding and grinding and grinding. And they say, oh, well, when we get to $1 million of revenue, then I'll made it. And then we can go out to a nice dinner. I heard such a heartbreaking story about a company that really set this $5 million revenue goal for the company. And then they all blew by the goal. They succeeded. They blew by the goal and they didn't realize it until they made it to $7 million that they never celebrated the $5 million. From a team building perspective, from an employee-employer relationship perspective, nothing can be more sad than doing that. And from, again, your loved ones, your familiar relationships in particular that have to deal with you day in and day out, it's really, really important to celebrate those big wins. So put it on the calendar, put the trip on the calendar, put the restaurant on the calendar or whatever, and make sure to make that happen. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, and you'll always figure it out. Like once you book it, you always figure out a way to do it, right? So in terms of this trip, like something that's showing up for us is, hey, we have to up our budget almost double. So maybe we'll figure it out. Like the universe will provide, we'll figure it out, and new opportunities will show up, right? So I think this idea, Hunter, it's maybe starting small and learning how to give to yourself, right? Because you can only give that to another, Hunter, and that which you're willing to receive for yourself. So start giving to yourself, right? Like this idea of when I first started, it was a coffee at Starbucks. When I first started in 2005, when I moved back down to Miami, but I'd do it every Sunday. And it was a $5-6 cup of coffee and I'd read whatever I was reading. And that was it for me. So it doesn't have to be anything that's crazy. It doesn't have to be a private jet or a private flight or, flying first class, whatever it is. But whatever it is that feeds your soul, there's something that's going to feed your soul. And this idea of having to earn it. Why do I have to earn it? Hunter, did you have to earn your life here? You don't have to earn anything. If you can start living from that place where you don't have to earn things because you love yourself. Now, here's what I'm not saying. Hey, go out and spend everything. But chances are, Hunter, the listeners of your show, the people we're talking to are way the opposite. They're misering out their life like I did for a long time, saving. And I think there's a certain period to do that. But that goes on indefinitely. And you know what happens is you kill your soul. You imprison your own soul. And you're the only one that can do that. And you think you're going to do it later? You don't have the muscle to do it later. Hey, I'm going to bench press 415 later. You were never bench pressing the whole way. What makes you think that all of a sudden you're going to learn how to actually enjoy your money and enjoy your time and enjoy your life?
Yeah,
it's
I really
ridiculous.
like that, especially because those wins and those celebratory moments, they don't have to be the private jet, right? That's not what we're talking about. I mean, I think it's a perfect example with you with the Starbucks, right? You're splurging to get the $5 Starbucks as opposed to making it yourself, for example. And that is such a good example because it does create that muscle memory where this is what we do when we accomplish things we like. When we want to give ourselves a pat on the back, which is something that, in my opinion, is completely under-talked about. In fact, a lot of the opposite is talked about. If you go on social media in particular, you see a lot of people that only focus on the grind. And I understand why that is. It's because when you look out into the world, you see a lot generally of people who are not putting enough effort in. But like Ray mentioned, this podcast is not for the general public. This podcast is for a group of people that are likely on the other side of the spectrum, very likely to have putting stress on themselves, stress on their relationships, stress on their spiritual relationships, etc., because they're pushing too hard.
Yeah, we're overly critical of ourselves. Hey, I'm not at 6% body fat. We beat ourselves up, and then there's more to do. You can't have a happy ending to a road filled with struggle, delayed gratification, struggle, to then get to a happy ending. Absolutely not. The ends do not justify the means. There is no happy ending to a road filled with struggle. Wayne Dyer, my boy Wayne Dyer was right. Happiness is the way. Joy is the way. What if we could grind with joy? Maybe a little bump and grind, like enjoy that. Like, what if we could do it like that, right? What about a line, right? Because when you're aligning and flowing your unique ability, you're not grinding, you're flowing. And here's what I'll tell you. Me and my wife did a lot of grinding in our 2005, 2016, 17, 18 even, a lot of 19. But this year's been a lot more flowing. And we're up in the first 6 months during COVID. We're up on 19 net, right? So irrespective of what's going on in the exterior world, you are success, irrespective of what's going on your bank statement or in the exterior world. And you start to follow that flow and follow that inner guidance and start to connect like that, life just opens up in a whole other way. And guess what? You can actually do more by doing less. And the best part is when you get to the end, you're actually fulfilled. Because we've all had those goals, guys. Hey, when I get to 10 grand a month. Hey, when I get to 20 grand. Okay, no, cool. Hey, when I get to 50, then I'll get to 50. All right, cool. No. You know what? I'm going to get to 100. And then you get there and it's like, nothing really changes. I've been through all those numbers, guys, and nothing really changes. The money doesn't change anything. You change, right? If you can bring where it changes you, this idea of more money, then I'll do it. You're never going to do it. So just start enjoying it along the way. And what you'll find, my point in all this is, if you're doing from that new place of being and feeling, and you're doing from that place, the doors will open up. It'll be a lot easier ride. God was looking to bless me throughout, and Christy, with a lot. Guys, we lost, I did this, I journaled this. We lost more money on deals that we didn't do out of fear than all the deals that we did. So it wasn't the fear of ever losing money. It was, he was trying to bless us with big, beautiful deals, and we were just getting in our own way out of fear and scarcity and all that other stuff. Well, the same thing shows up on the money side.
What are some of the resources and books or podcasts that you listen to that have influenced you and really formed your way of thinking when it comes to this topic?
I think the biggest thing, Hunter, is this has got to be an experiential thing. And what I mean experiential is, guys, sit out and meditate. I mean, freaking, in our world, Ray Dalio meditates for 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night religiously. Richard Branson, right? Like all these guys, they meditate because they're looking to connect with something beyond themselves. They understand that of themselves, they can do nothing, but the Father, through them, all things are possible. Father, mother, whatever you believe in, but there's a higher source guiding these guys, and they're listening and they're tuning in and they're paying attention. That's why they can, Hunter, you've seen great runners run, and they're not running like everybody else. The great ones, they're not reading the same things. They don't read books on running. So I've gotten away from reading books and I've read a lot of great books on finance stuff, but that hasn't changed the game for me. What's changed the game for me lately has been much more on the spiritual. Like the sharpest guys I listen to, which I think are on Real Vision, Raul Paul and a lot of these guys, I listen to them. They'll tell you, like, once you kind of get behind closed doors, no one really knows. And the humble ones will tell you, no one really knows. I don't care who you are. They don't really know. So what can I really know? Well, I can trust my creator. I can trust myself. I can love myself. Like, what are the things I can control? And those are the things I can control. I can control my consciousness. And by the way, Hunter, I'm going to give you the books. The biggest realization I've had recently is you don't take any of your money. And I've met a lot of rich guys. I stayed at a house in LA, actually in something Oaks. I forget where it is. Rolling Oaks, somewhere up there by, whatever. It's a big farm. The owner of the Portland Trailblazers, and I happened to speak to one of his grandchildren, who's a close friend of mine. And he said, Ray, this guy had hundreds of millions of dollars. And the way he set up his estate and everything else is for the family to be united. And none of what he wanted ended up happening because you're trying to control things after things are gone. And control is only really a fear-based thing. So you really can't control anything. My point is, you don't take any of this with you. There's only one thing you take with you to the next lifetime or the next that you evolve with, and that's consciousness. So in a great book, they said, lay up your treasures in heaven where moth and dust cannot corrupt, where thieves can't come in the middle of the night and take things. What he meant is lay up your treasures in consciousness. And you will absolutely be provided for here, because it's always the invisible that drives the visible. It's always, again, even in Think and Grow Rich, it's thoughts are things. It's always the invisible, the connection to the higher source, the connection to the ether. It's always that connection that drives everything else and the exterior. And once you open up and you make that connection, you have to be abundantly provided for, because there is no lack in spirit. There's only lack in the external world. But if you're tuning in, if you're connecting, you have to be abundantly provided for. So a few resources. I love Louise Hay. She's got a book, You Can Heal Your Life. Great book about loving the self. I love the Shanti Crystal Foundation's got a book. It's called The Way of Mastery. I've probably read that book 5 or 6 times. It's a great book. It's very similar to A Course in Miracles. Again, these are both books that they're channeling Jesus through both those books, A Course in Miracles and A Way of Mastery. You Can Heal Your Life, Money and Law of Attraction. These are all books that are going to help. Kyle Cease wrote a book. He's a comedian, The Illusion of Money. I'm actually going to a meditation retreat with him. These are all books that can begin to just open up that consciousness, but it really comes down to you guys making an experience, opening up every day, whether it's 2 or 3 minutes, meditating, opening up, and then actually going out and then doing something that shows yourself that you love yourself. Like, go ahead and buy what you want. Go ahead and get what you want. Go ahead and give generously. Don't give like a bitch, and that took me a while. And I'm talking to myself. I'm not talking to anybody out there. I love every single one of you. But a big key is I just, I remember my first painting I bought. I never bought a painting. I didn't know what a painting was. I mean, and one of my friends said, hey, this is going to help a lot of veterans. And I said, how many veterans? He's like 100 veterans. And I go, with $4 or $5 grand, I can help all these veterans. I wrote the check. But then that helped open up a whole bunch of other things. But then I got good at giving to others, right? I got really good at giving money, but not giving to myself. So it can play a little trick on you. That's what I really want to share with you guys. Just start giving to yourself. If flying first class was something we started to give to ourselves with, and now we only do that, right? It'll become your standard, right? And then the universe will provide. Like, as I started to up my standards and start to live waterfront or beachfront or live whatever we want to live, and I'm not boasting, I'm a poor kid from Miami. I mean, I know where I come from. First language is Spanish. I'm grateful every day. One of my massage therapists had a great question, Hunter. And she said to me, what would you have if all you had today is what you were grateful for yesterday? So what would you have today if all you had today was what you were grateful for yesterday? And my response immediately to her was, I'd have a freaking lot. There's a gratitude practice that goes on, and not just for the money things, but my consciousness, my beating heart, the life I'm living, the little things, the breath, the birds chirping. I mean, the birds had a choir this morning as I was meditating. It was amazing. I mean, it was the most beautiful music I've ever heard. But we miss these things, the sun on my skin. And then you get into everything else. But just make these practices and try to develop that consciousness. And it takes time, like everything else. And don't compare it to anything else. Like, when you start to develop the spiritual path, it's not like a financial path. And it's not like any other goal achievement. Hey, I'm going to go out, work, hustle. It's a very flowy, different, letting go of attachments, trusting, unfolding, surrendering, which us alpha types go out there and get it. Hunter types, including myself in this conversation and listeners to this show, aren't really used to surrendering and allowing and flowing and trusting. We're used to controlling, making it happen, force it, make it happen. Let's go, do it now. That's not going to get you to peace, love, and joy. And guys, it's all about remembering who you really are. You are peace. You are love. You are joy. You just got to remember it. But like my boy said, the kingdom of heaven is literally within you and you see it not. And he's saying, living the kingdom right here, right now. And it's inside you. It's inside everybody. We just forgot. And we're living an illusion.
Man, I really like this. We've gotten so much interesting stuff, and I think it's a conversation that just isn't being had enough. I especially like the discussion about meditation. I completely agree with you. If you haven't meditated yet and you start meditating, especially if you're kind of like, competitive, alpha, trying to like force the issue, there's nothing less so the case with meditation. It's not like the more work you put in, you get this X result. No, it's a fluid, evolving. It is a muscle that you can grow and strengthen, but not in the same way that it works in business, for example. All very powerful. Ray, listen, we have done quite a number on this particular show, but before we jump off though, let the listeners know, how they can learn more about you, your firm, what you're working on.
Best thing is I'm on Facebook at Ramon Gonzalez. Me and my wife have a podcast. It's called Both on Board. And we talk about entrepreneur couples co-creating the life and business of their dreams, how we did it, how, lifestyle by design, everything we've done in there from finances. We talk a lot about spirituality. And then lastly, lifestyle, spirituality, and then money. We mix it all together and how to do that as a couple, how to win this game together. And again, we don't have it all figured out. We're learning as we go and we're sharing.
Love it. Hey, Ray, thanks so much, buddy.
Appreciate you.
All right, listeners, thanks for checking out the episode. As always, the contact information for our guest will be available in the show notes page, which is hosted on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher. Don't forget, if you want access to some of the free goodies that I'm talking about at the beginning of these episodes, like free ebooks, weekly investor emails, and articles about some of the most important investment-related topics, make sure that you have created an account with CFC because this stuff is automatically available. You can do this by going to cashflowconnections.com and signing up as an accredited investor. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to email me at hunterthompson@cashflowconnections.com. Thanks again.